Amazing cleaner exposed. Hidden genius. She reprogrammed the robot 30 engineers couldn't control. Clara stared at the malfunctioning robot, its metallic frame silent and stubborn. The corporate office around her, all sleek surfaces and high-tech devices, pulsed with a quiet desperation she could feel in her bones. Day after day, she scrubbed the floors and dusted the desks of these engineers, smart, sharp, and often condescending. With each wipe of the cloth, she could almost hear her late father's voice echoing in her mind, a genius who had never seen his inventions take flight. Doubt wrapped around her like a vice as she thought about her own hidden capabilities. What did they see when they looked at her? A cleaner? A backdrop to their hustle, perhaps. But could she be more? It was lunchtime when she heard their frustrations echo through the sleek hallways. Clumps of engineers gathered, voices raised in impotent anger. "We're wasting resources," one man snapped, punctuating his point with a fist hitting the table. "You can't blame me for the robot's failures. We all thought it would work." The tension pooled in her stomach like a heavy stone. She watched them argue, this team of supposed masterminds losing confidence, grasping for someone to blame. Why didn't they see her? Did they care only for fame and accolades, leaving no room for hard work like hers? Before she could dwell too long on that question, her thoughts spiraled into action. What if she stepped forward? What if she raised her voice, shared an idea or two? Yet the knot inside her tightened further, a wild mix of determination and fear battling for dominance. All those late nights at home, spent caring for her children while scrubbing floors, she had no formal engineering training. What if they mocked her? There was a huge risk in revealing any semblance of ambition. Yet, each time she passed those gleaming robots, the urge flickered anew. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Desperation clung to her as night fell. The office dimmed, the clatter of chaos faded, and all that remained was the hum of machinery. Heart racing, Clara found herself staring at the programming notes she had swept aside. Hours of back and forth between engineers, conflicts that only revealed their flaws and fragility. Something inside her sparked. Maybe she could try, just this once. She took a deep breath and sat down before the robot, hands trembling on the keyboard. With each keystroke, the weight of her father's lost dreams crashed over her. Her fingers took on a life of their own, pushing through self-doubt. Would she succeed, or was this a fool's errand? The clock ticked loudly, mocking her urgency. But she couldn't stop. She fought a battle within the confines of her own mind, her ambition colliding with fear, the chasm between her world and theirs threatening to swallow her whole. Then, with a jolt, the robot whirred to life. As the first light of dawn broke, Clara's heart raced, her breath shallow. Did she dare reveal her night's labor to a group that saw her as invisible? The memory of their arrogance simmered beneath the surface, and her spirit wavered. What if they dismissed her? What if they refused to see her for the genius she had glimpsed in herself? Her world narrowed to this pivotal moment, a crossroad of fear and hope. Would she claim her place, or retreat back to the shadows? She stood on the brink of revelation, poised to challenge everything they believed about her. The morning sun filtered through the office blinds, casting sharp lines of light on the floor. Clara sat at the now responsive robot, her heart pounding with each passing second. The engineers would arrive any moment, and she'd have to decide whether to bring her work into the light of scrutiny or shove it back under the rug of her old identity. The idea spun in her mind like fragments of glass, beautiful yet sharp enough to cut. She imagined them entering, laptops in hand, the air thick with their superiority. The bright-eyed project manager would share yesterday's playful jabs cloaked in analyst speak. Clara could practically hear the jokes at her expense. But this time, she was different, transformed by the spark of hope ignited in her chest. The programming notes she had brushed aside now felt like her personal manifesto, a testament to the raw ability her father had always encouraged, but which had languished under the weight of daily mundanity. Taking in a deep breath, Clara fought against the instinct to retreat. She lifted her head and turned the robot to face her, as if it were a partner conjured into existence by her imagination. She opened her local code files, glancing towards the door every few seconds. Fear trickled back into her veins, but she pushed it aside. She recalled her father's words, "You shape your worth, Clara. No one else can do that for you." With this guidance etched in her mind, she steeled her resolve. As the minutes dragged on, tension hung in the air alongside anticipation. Should she invite an engineer to observe? Deferring to their judgment seemed unwise. After all, they had misjudged the robot's potential from the beginning. Her hands danced across the keyboard again, entering lines of command that only a few hours ago had felt impossible. She had harnessed something beyond just coding. She had unlocked the voice that had long been silenced. When the office door swung open, Clara nearly faltered, the clamor of footsteps echoing through the sterile space. The engineers filtered in, their chatter abruptly halting as they spotted the now vibrant robot. She could feel the weight of their gazes, perplexed and skeptical. The project manager, a tall man with tousled hair, strode forward, a mix of intrigue and trepidation coloring his features. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice cutting through the uncertainty. Clara swallowed hard, her throat dry. She had just stepped into a new realm, but speaking out was a different battle entirely. The lump in her throat was reassuring, a physical reminder that she was alive, that courage and fear coexisted side by side. I worked on it. The robot," she managed, the words tumbling out in fragments. "What do you mean you worked on it? You clean," another engineer chimed in, disbelief evident in his tone. Clara felt the burn of their dismissal stab through her. She could shrink back, allow their ridicule to reignite the shadows she had fought so hard to escape. But somewhere inside, a steely resolve began to unfurl. "I fixed the programming. It wasn't malfunctioning, it just needed a different approach." Confusion flickered in their eyes, followed by a hesitant curiosity. Could she really pivot their perception of her? Could one simple revelation tear down the arrogant barriers they had constructed around her? As her heart raced anew, Clara knew she stood on the brink of a pivotal confrontation, not just with them, but within herself. What if they don't want to see me? The question wrapped tightly around her consciousness, an echo from a distant past. But this was her moment, a chance to paint herself beyond the role of a cleaner. She took a step closer, determination rippling through her. Somewhere within this challenge lay validation, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been overlooked or undervalued. As she explained the modifications, a mix of disbelief and intrigue crossed the engineer's features. They leaned in closer, contemplating a reformed perspective. Each nod of approval, from disbelief to curiosity, sent electric pulses through her veins. Yet, even in the thick of this awakening, Clara felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Would they accept her newfound identity? What if they decided she was still merely the invisible woman behind the veil of scrubbing floors? The air hung heavy with possibility and tension as they began to engage with her changes, and the essential question remained poised on the tip of her tongue. Would they allow her to share in their world at last, or would they forever disregard the brilliance she had unearthed? Clara's mind raced as she realized the true challenge ahead. Could she endure the fight for recognition, for respect, and for herself? The moment of truth loomed as they dissected her work, weighing the importance of her contributions against their ingrained biases. What would happen next? Clara could feel the room closing in around her, the air thick. The engineers, initially reluctant, now huddled around the robot, probing her lines of code with the same blend of intrigue and disbelief that had characterized their initial reactions. Each furrowed brow served as a reminder that she had dismantled their preconceived notions, but it also triggered her insecurities anew. "Are you sure this is safe?" The project manager's voice sliced through her fragile confidence. "We wouldn't want to break anything even further." Safe. The word hung in the air, heavy with implications. Clara knew that safety was merely a veneer, often used to mask an unwillingness to embrace change. "I've tested it more than once. The robot's now adaptive, and I can demonstrate how it works." With each keystroke, she showed them the algorithms that had transformed what they deemed a failure. The robot responded, moving meticulously through a series of tasks she had designed. The engineers observed, their initial disdain giving way to a stir of acknowledgement as the machine followed her commands effortlessly. But even as she received faint murmurs of surprise, doubt echoed in her mind. Were they ever really ready to accept her? "Impressive coding," muttered one engineer, his tone measured. "But why weren't you involved in this project from the beginning? Your insights could have changed everything." The question felt like a needle pricking the bubble of her triumph. "Because I didn't. I haven't had the chance before." The words escaped her lips before she could rein them in, laden with the weight of years spent on the sidelines. "I was always overlooked. But this time, it's different." "Different how?" another engineer probed, skepticism etched into his features. "Being a cleaner doesn't exactly align with programming expertise." It was a pointed jab, alluding to the limits they had created for her. For a heartbeat, Clara felt the ground shift beneath her. The robot stood there, a testament to her abilities, yet she felt the shadows of how they saw her tightening like a noose. She had worked hard, dissecting code and rewriting it from a place of pure determination, yet their words were still shackles binding her to an identity she wished to shed. "Because I'm not just a cleaner. I'm capable, more than you think. I've proven that." She forced the words, her voice trembling just slightly. "I can bring value to this team as more than just a background figure." Silence enveloped the room. Their collective gaze bore down on her, heavy with the scrutiny that demanded evidence of her worth. Clara's heart raced. This was not merely about her role in the project. It was about redefining who she was and confronting the narrow identities they had imposed upon her. With each passing moment, she felt her resolve crystallizing into something more powerful than fear, a fierce insistence on her own legitimacy. The outlines of her vision began to sharpen, illuminated by the spark of ambition she had buried for too long. If they wouldn't acknowledge her contributions, she had to make them impossible to ignore. "Let's see how adaptable it really is," Clara said, her tone shifting to one of authority. "I'll set up a live demonstration where the robot can listen and respond to dynamic commands." "All right," the project manager finally said, a blend of curiosity and challenge reflected in his eyes. "Show us what you've got, Clara." As Clara prepared for the demonstration, the tension morphed into exhilaration. She combed through her plans with purpose, relishing the rhythm in her fingertips as they danced across the keyboard. This was her moment, the intersection of possibility and self-realization, and she wouldn't let it slip away. Just as the robot began to execute her commands, a thought pierced through the haze of adrenaline. This could either catapult her to recognition or reaffirm the whispers of doubt that had long haunted her. As the robot engaged flawlessly, the engineer's reactions mirrored her hopes and fears. Suspicion warred with admiration. She could sense their shifting perceptions as she showcased her work. But beneath that surface recognition lurked an even greater challenge. Would she hold her ground if they tried to dismiss her brilliance again? The air crackled with anticipation, and Clara felt the question rise unbidden within her. Could she truly claim her place, or was this newfound conviction merely a fleeting illusion? The stakes escalated with every tick of the clock, and Clara braced herself for the truth that lay ahead, one that could either destroy her progress or propel her into a future filled with uncharted potential. The demonstration unfolded like a tightly woven tapestry, each moment stitched together by Clara's determination. The room was electric, eyes locked on the robot as it executed commands with the grace of a performer on stage. Each movement was not just a function of physics, but a manifestation of Clara's painstaking thought processes, invisible to most, but essential to the evolving narrative of her career. Watching the engineer's expression evolve from skepticism to a glimmer of respect, Clara felt a surge of adrenaline coursing through her veins. They were beginning to see her, not just as a cleaner. No, she was the architect behind this transformation. For the first time, she felt the weight of their gaze shift toward a shared respect, a tentative acknowledgement of her intellect and capability. But as the applause trickled in, she could feel an undercurrent of doubt tugging at the edges of her euphoria. Would their newfound recognition extend beyond this moment, or would it dissipate, leaving her back within the confines of her previous identity? The admiration felt fragile, and she clung to it, fearful of what would happen if it shattered. "That was quite the performance," said the project manager, his voice steady. "How did you manage to enhance its adaptability so quickly?" It was a compliment, and yet it felt like an inquiry intended to trap her in her own words. Clara swallowed, suppressing the urge to reveal the blend of self-study and countless late nights that had gone into this achievement. Instead, she focused on the robot, remaining steadfast in her conviction that she could shape her narrative. "I observed the initial failures," Clara said, carefully choosing her words. "From there, I developed adaptive algorithms that allow the robot to learn in real time. It's about understanding the environment, its errors, and making iterative improvements." With every articulate explanation, Clara fortified her position. She could hear the admiration in their voices, but she wanted more than fleeting praise. She sought a role that delved deeper into innovation, where her insights and ideas would be not just acknowledged, but sought after. "Clearly, there's more to this project than we initially realized," one engineer remarked, his perspective shifting visibly as he regarded her. "What's next, Clara?" The question sent ripples of potential through her. Her mind whirred with ideas, strategic visions that flared to life. Collaborations, expansions of functionality, outreach to integrate more complex systems. The possibilities were endless, and she stood at the precipice of a brave new world. "I'd like to introduce machine learning capabilities," she proposed, emboldened by her earlier success. "Imagine a robot that can not only react, but evolve based on historical data. We can combine previous failures with user feedback to build a profoundly intelligent machine." Eager nods swirled among her colleagues, and Clara felt a rush of validation. Her voice no longer wavered, it carried authority. Yet, as ideas flowed, so too did the weight of the challenges that lay ahead. The specter of doubt reemerged, whispering that this ambition could backfire if not executed flawlessly. What if she faltered under scrutiny when it counted the most? As conversations buzzed and plans began to materialize, Clara became aware of a shift in dynamics. She was no longer in the background, seen only as a cleaner. She had stepped into the limelight, but with visibility came an overwhelming pressure to not slip back into obscurity. "Clara, we want you to lead the next phase of development," the project manager announced, his words hanging heavily in the air. A rush of exhilaration mingled with creeping anxiety. She could hardly catch her breath. The very mantle she had longed for now weighed on her shoulders. Would she be able to manage not just the project, but the expectations and potential failures that would accompany it? The room erupted with excitement, her colleagues rallying behind her proposal. But Clara's heart raced. As she accepted, her mind spun with questions of competence and self-doubt, lurking shadows threatening to reclaim the light she had just seized. Emboldened with recognition, yet tethered to her insecurities, Clara realized that this moment marked not just a career shift, but a personal battle. How would she navigate the autonomy placed before her while battling her inner demons? This was a new adventure, but would she have the resilience to see it through? Clara inhaled deeply, confronting the whirlwind of emotions. It was time to step fully into her power, embracing both the burdens
and the triumphs of leadership. Just as she resolved to forge ahead, her gaze caught a glimpse of the robot, its metallic frame gleaming. In its reflection, she saw not just the image of a burgeoning expert, but the possibilities of the woman she aspired to be. But as she began to plot her course forward, a voice interrupted her thoughts, soft but piercing. "You do know they'll be waiting for you to fail, right?" The words hung in the air, and Clara felt her world tilt. She turned, ready to address the looming specter of doubt that threatened her nascent confidence. This was the first confrontation, one that could either ignite her drive or diminish her resolve. How would she respond to the challenge ahead, not just as a professional, but as a woman redefining her identity? The air felt thick as Clara grappled with the weight of the speaker's words. She turned to face the source of the voice, a colleague named Jason, whose own path had traced a trajectory of harsh realities and muted aspirations. There was something in his expression that both infuriated and terrified her. Was he simply echoing the fears she tried so hard to suppress, or was there a malicious intent behind his warning? "You can't let them impose their doubts on you," Clara said, her voice firmer than she felt. "This is an opportunity to forge something new." But even as she spoke those words, the flickering flame of apprehension danced ominously at the back of her mind. Every success she achieved now seemed overshadowed by an ever-present danger of failing spectacularly. Jason raised an eyebrow, skepticism plainly etched on his face. Opportunity or a trap? They're looking for someone to blame if this fails, and you know that the higher you rise, the harder you fall. His words lingered in the air like a taunt, chipping away at the echoes of support she had just received. Clara wrapped her arms around herself, feeling exposed and vulnerable. She couldn't afford to let doubt seep into her thoughts. She needed clarity, resolve, and a plan to institute the vision she so urgently wanted to bring to life. The weeks stretched out before her like an unraveling thread, each day brimming with the potential to either build a solid foundation or snap under the tension of her anxieties. The first strategy meeting loomed. Clara sat at her desk, diving back into notes and algorithms, hoping that knowledge would fortify her against her shaky confidence. The more she immersed herself in complex data sets and potential programming frameworks, the clearer the path started to appear, at least on paper. But practice made perfect only if she had the confidence to align the theory with execution. When the day for the meeting arrived, Clara stood in the conference room, acutely aware of the 10 pairs of eyes trained on her. Their expectation weighed heavily on her, and she could feel Jason's skepticism lurking in her peripheral vision. As she flipped through her slides detailing the introduction of machine learning, combining hysteresis feedback loops and real-time error correction, her mind swirled. "Clara, can you explain how this implementation will differ from the current model?" one engineer asked, their tone challenging. There it was, the opening Jason had hinted at. She could feel the familiar knot of fear tightened in her stomach, but Clara took a moment to breathe, remembering the hours spent buried in her research and the strategies she had envisioned. "Absolutely," Clara replied, her voice steadying. "The difference lies in the learning capability of the system.
This new model will utilize iterative learning from real-world interactions, allowing adaptive responses to unforeseen circumstances, making it smarter over time. As she spoke, anger and determination intermingled, igniting her drive. She was no longer just a cleaner proposing ideas, she was a leader steering the ship into uncertain but promising waters. The murmurs of skepticism began to fade as she shared her vision, her conviction growing palpable. But that subtle undercurrent of doubt in the back of her mind screamed louder than ever. Every doubting glance from Jason threatened to destabilize the hard-fought confidence she was slowly building. After the meeting, as colleagues began discussing implications and next steps animatedly, she caught Jason's eye and saw a hint of something more: contentment. The kind of satisfaction that thrived on doubt. In that moment, Clara realized she was not simply battling an external environment full of skeptics. She was confronting a reflection of her inner turmoil. If she was to solidify her newfound role, she would need to challenge not just the perceptions of others, but also the narratives she clung to about her own limitations. Next time, I won't just stand firm, Clara thought defiantly. I'll control the conversation. However, even as she plotted her path forward, the question loomed larger. Could she unravel the thread of doubt that bound her to past identities? The weight of that question loomed large as she stepped away from the conference room, holding the promise of her ambition and the shadows of her fears in a struggle for dominance. What lay ahead was uncertain, but Clara understood this was no longer merely a journey of professional development. It was a personal odyssey, a battle for a new identity rooted in self-acceptance and resilience. And as she prepared for the next challenge awaiting her, she couldn't shake the haunting realization. What if the biggest obstacle was not others, but herself? Clara spent the ensuing days oscillating between an invigorating sense of purpose and paralyzing self-doubt. Each morning felt like a conditioning ritual where she mustered her resolve in front of the mirror, whispering affirmations to encourage the leader she yearned to be. She refused to allow Jason's cynicism to determine her trajectory. Instead, she turned inward, searching for strengths she had long forgotten. Her colleagues were abuzz with discussions about machine learning applications, and Clara found herself drawn into the dynamics of their conversations. They debated technical principles, challenges with an enthusiasm that inspired her. For once, glimmers of confidence began to surface, pushing her to think beyond daily tasks and consider broader implications of their project. She began drafting a comprehensive plan that addressed not only technical aspects, but also the managerial responsibilities inherent to her emerging role. Armed with a newfound perspective, she decided to engage Jason directly, not as an adversary, but an ally. She understood that confronting his skepticism head-on might shift the narrative. Seeking him out, she approached him during a lunch break, her heart pounding. "Hey, Jason," she started, her voice steadier than she anticipated. "Can we talk about the feedback you gave during the meeting? I'd like to discuss further ideas for addressing those concerns." He raised an eyebrow, surprised but intrigued. "You don't have to do that. Your presentation was fine. It's just a matter of whether the team will support the project or not." Clara swallowed down the initial urge to retreat. "It's not enough for me to just present ideas. I want us to challenge the model effectively and ensure it's viable for the long term." She could see the gears turning in his mind, the internal conflict wrestling with his previous dismissal. "And you think collaborating with me will help with that?" "Absolutely," Clara replied, her voice filled with a blend of certainty and vulnerability. "I believe we can strengthen this project together. I need your insights to navigate the technical roadblocks. This isn't just about me, it's about producing something groundbreaking." Jason studied her for a long moment, the skepticism that usually clouded his demeanor fading slightly. "All right, I'd be intrigued to see what you've come up with. Let's review your plan." As they reviewed her ideas, the conversation shifted. What started as a tense dialogue morphed into a brainstorming session where solutions flowed rather than barriers.
Clara reveled in the collaborative spirit, realizing that her voice was not just valid, it was pivotal in the discussion. By the end of the session, Clara experienced an electrifying rush. Her strategic vision began to gain traction, and the feedback Jason offered challenged her to refine her ideas further. Yet, the thrill was intertwined with a lingering doubt. Would Jason truly support her in the long run, or would his inherent skepticism rear its head again? She was transforming, but for every ounce of confidence she gained, the sense of uncertainty nagged at her like an echo that wouldn't fade away. Still, the prospect of gaining Jason's support ignited a flame of possibility. Clara began to understand that the struggle she faced was not merely internal. It was about rallying allies and constructing a platform where her ideas could shine. As the team prepared for the next pivotal meeting, Clara was determined to present her redrafted strategies with boldness and clarity. The looming presence of potential success filled her with an urgency she couldn't ignore. Yet she wondered, would her transformation hold true even when the stakes were? The thought of failure? The thought of failure whispered in her ear. And as Clara left the conference room after their collaboration, she couldn't escape the sentiment that the true test was on the horizon. Would she lose her footing when it mattered most? The moment of truth was fast approaching. Throughout her journey, she had to forge a new narrative, not just for her career, but for the person she was becoming. Clara steeled herself for the challenge ahead, motivated by the fresh alliance she had built, yet haunted by the specter of her own internal conflict. What if this was the moment she had to face not just the world, but her own fears once and for all? As the days dwindled before the crucial meeting, Clara pored over her plan with an intensity that felt almost frenetic. Each detail mattered. She meticulously aligned her ideas with the expectations that had once felt insurmountable. The return of her confidence breathed life into her vision, but deep down, the weight of skepticism remained, both from Jason and herself. She locked herself in her office, creating a sanctuary filled with diagrams, notes, and a few untouched coffee mugs. A distant buzz of chatter punctuated her concentration, faint voices discussing metrics and outcomes, but Clara was absorbed in her own world. This was her chance to prove not only to Jason, but to herself that she could rise above lingering doubts. With every pitch she rehearsed in front of the mirror, she felt remnants of fear surfacing. What if she faltered? What if the team didn't embrace her vision? These questions echoed loudly in the silence of her office, threatening to drown out the self-assured affirmations she had been nurturing. She took a breath, pushing aside the intimidation with a renewed sense of purpose. This was not just about the meeting. It was about claiming her place in a professional landscape where she aspired to belong. In need of further validation, she sought out Jessica, her closest confidant at work, hoping for a fresh perspective. "Do you think this all makes sense?" Clara asked as she laid her proposal in front of her, fingers trembling as she awaited feedback. Jessica perused the document, her brow furrowing in concentration. "You're aligning your technical solutions well with the business needs," she finally said. "But don't shy away from expressing your passion more vividly. The team needs to see why this matters to you on a personal level." Clara nodded, the insight resonating with her. She had been so focused on the logistics that she forgot to weave in the story of why their project was crucial, not just for success, but for innovation. "The impact we're aiming for could change how we perceive artificial intelligence. It should ignite excitement," Jessica continued. "You've got a chance to lead this transformation, Clara." Reinvigorated, Clara stood at the edge of a significant truth. Her voice could indeed shape the team's perception of their project. This realization shifted her approach. She began to integrating anecdotes and powerful imagery into her presentation, bringing to life the potential for their work, not merely in numbers, but in societal benefits. That evening, as she departed the office, a familiar knot in her stomach resided uneasily in her core, yet the thrill of her vision coursed through her veins. The sharpened narrative she created revealed an empowering aspect of herself, a narrative she wanted her colleagues to believe in too. But that evening also brought with it a moment of reckoning. Alone, she confronted the shadow of her own fear. The looming presence of Jason's continued skepticism roamed uncomfortably in her mind. Would he appreciate the shift in her presentation, or would he find a flaw, undermining her progress just when she felt closest to her ambitions? As she sat in her living room, the weight of impending judgment pressed down like a heavy blanket. She cycled through possible scenarios, her heart racing with anticipation. Suddenly, a realization struck. Her fears were no longer anchoring her down, but had morphed into a challenge that could propel her forward. This was her moment, and she had to face it head-on. Rising from the couch, Clara committed to one last round of edits. She embraced the notion that these next steps in her career, while daunting, were an opportunity to elevate her vision above the noise of skepticism. The prospect of not just being accepted, but celebrated was almost tangible. As she closed her laptop for the night, determination coalesced into a singular thought. This was just the beginning. The meeting awaited. Clarity was now within her reach. But as she let herself drift into sleep, that sharp question edged into her mind again. Was she truly prepared to face Jason and a room full of colleagues ready to scrutinize her every word? The gravity of her resolve cemented into a crystal-clear focus. She could either shy away from the challenge, or she could take the plunge. She would not run. Clara steeled herself for what lay ahead, ready to confront both Jason and the deeper insecurities rooted within her. The moment of confrontation lingered just beyond the threshold. The question that echoed as she drifted to sleep was how to turn her fears into the very fuel she needed to prevail. The day had arrived, an amalgamation of hope and dread coiling tightly within Clara. She arrived at the office half an hour early, an hour she had claimed for herself in the midst of this monumental day. The polished marble floors gleamed under the fluorescent lights, mirroring the clarity she desired in her thoughts. She took a deep breath, letting the aroma of freshly brewed coffee swirl around her senses, grounding her to the present moment. Inside the conference room, the harsh lights felt like scrutiny itself, illuminating every crevice of uncertainty mirrored in the glass walls. Clara positioned her notes meticulously, her heart fluttering with anticipation as she glanced at the clock ticking ever closer to the meeting's start. Each tick echoed her racing thoughts, reminding her of the weight of expectation she carried into this room. As the team trickled in, she offered polite smiles, though inside her thoughts churned. Would they connect with her vision? Would the flood of enthusiasm she had harnessed translate into their minds as it did in hers? Jason strutted in last, exuding an air of confidence that both intimidated and inspired Clara. His presence intensified the whirlpool of self-doubt within her, yet she steeled herself, recalling Jessica's advice to share not just data, but her passion and personal stake in the project. When it was finally her turn to present, Clara's pulse quickened. Taking the deep breath she had practiced, she launched into her narrative, weaving a tapestry of innovation and societal impact. She watched her colleagues closely. Some jotted notes, others maintained focused gazes, while Jason folded his arms with an inscrutable expression. The energy shifted from skepticism to a riveting intrigue as she painted the picture that revolved around their work. Then, pivotal moment, she shared a story. It was personal, a story about the day she realized technology's potential to reshape lives. As she spoke of her younger brother, who had struggled with learning disabilities, Clara could feel the atmosphere in the room change. Eyes widened and jaws unclenched. This wasn't just a presentation. This was a testament to why this project mattered to her. But she read the challenging glint in Jason's eyes. After her speech, he launched into his critique, incisive and to the point. Clara could feel her confidence wobble as he dissected her ideas, questioning the feasibility of her timelines and the resources required. The calculated manner of his analysis felt like a skilled knife,
Yet beneath the critique, she sensed a subtle underlying respect for her passionate approach. "Clara, while your story is moving, how do you intend to mitigate potential risks?" he probed, his voice steady and devoid of condescension. At that moment, the fear threatened to flood back, but she held on. "By implementing phased trials," she replied, gaining traction with her argument. "We can adapt our approach based on real-time feedback, learning from iterations, just as I learned from my brother's progress. This project isn't static, it evolves with us." The air shifted again, tension easing ever so slightly. The team began to nod, intrigued by the practical mechanics now interlaced with her vision. With each question from Jason, Clara flexed a newfound strength, answering confidently, asserting her grasp on both the project's intricacies and the emotional resonance of her narrative. She could sense the tide turning. Skeptics softened, minds opened, and the weight of judgment began to lighten. As the meeting drew to a close, a surprising impulse surged within her, to embrace vulnerability. "I appreciate your feedback, Jason," she concluded, fixing her gaze on him. "I genuinely believe in this project, but I'm equally aware of my footing. If this succeeds, we will redefine capabilities, and if it falters, I will own that too. I invite you to hold me accountable as I navigate this path." Silence enveloped the room as her words resonated. The challenge she had once feared to embrace had transformed into the cadence of her strength. Finally, Jason looked her way, a hint of appreciation flickering in his eyes. Clara exited the room, buoyed by a whirlwind of adrenaline and confidence. She had articulated her vision, handled critiques, and dared to show a piece of her soul. This meeting was more than about her project. It was a declaration of her own potential. As she settled back at her desk, Clara's heart raced, not from anxiety, but exhilaration. Yet tension rippled through her. A single question gnawed at her mind. Would Jason act on the respect she felt he had brushed against? Would he harness her passion into tangible support? Or would skepticism still linger, casting long shadows over her breakthrough? The door to her ambition creaked wide open, and she stood on the threshold, ready for whatever came next. But as Clara's resolve crumbled into the exhilarating unknown, she realized her journey was just beginning, a journey that would demand even more courage and conviction. The following weeks unfolded like a delicate dance, with Clara cautiously stepping into her newfound confidence. She approached her work with a vigor she hadn't previously realized was buried beneath layers of doubt. The collaborative meetings that once left her trembling became platforms for her to explore innovative ideas and solutions. Each exchange with her team sparked ignitions of creativity that pushed her thinking beyond her earlier limitations. Clara was determined to forge stronger relationships with her colleagues, keenly aware of the power of collaboration. She began to host informal brainstorming sessions, inviting anyone willing to contribute. Initially hesitant, her colleagues slowly warmed to the idea, recognizing the value in sharing their insights and expertise. It was liberating to witness the workshop transform into a think tank, where imaginative solutions emerged like wildfire. Clara's eagerness to embrace the collective talent around her showcased her growth. No longer a lone figure, but rather a unifying force. Yet Jason's critiques still lingered in her mind. They were sharp yet constructive, producing a mental echo that both unnerved and motivated her. Instead of shying away from his feedback, Clara sought him out more deliberately. After a particularly fruitful team meeting, she approached him, curiosity igniting her composure. "Jason, would you mind sharing more insights about your perspective on the strategy I proposed? I think your experience could really help refine it further." To her surprise, Jason paused, his brow furrowing slightly in thought. His demeanor had shifted. She was no longer just a novice to be evaluated, but a proactive peer, enveloped in a genuine desire to learn. "Let's review the data together. I believe adjustments could improve the impact," he replied, his tone shifting to one of collaboration rather than critique. As they worked side by side, Clara found herself grappling with the weight of vulnerability.
Working with Jason was both enlightening and terrifying, a dynamic she hadn't anticipated. His expertise pushed her boundaries, challenging her to revisit assumptions and rethink methodologies. Despite the moments of discomfort, each realization she gained left her breathless with excitement, solidifying her sense of potential. Over time, the project began to solidify into something tangible. Clara led meetings with renewed focus, armed with actionable insights formed collaboratively. Yet she still wrestled with the shadow of self-doubt. Each quickened heartbeat during Jason's critiques didn't fade. Instead, they became fuel under her skin, igniting a fierce determination to prove her capabilities and her worth. One evening, late at the office, Clara scanned through the project materials, contemplating the monumental shift her initiative had taken. She noticed some minor inconsistencies within the datasets that hadn't previously caught her attention. The instinct to discuss her findings with Jason popped into her head, but a flicker of fear dampened her resolve. What if he perceived it as a lack of awareness? In that moment of indecision, Clara drew on the courage that had propelled her so far. "I need to be assertive, in every aspect," she whispered to herself. She crafted an email, outlining her observations and the rationale behind them. Just before clicking send, questions cascaded through her mind. Was she bold enough to confront him again, illustrating her evolving capability? Was there room for growth and friction, or was she merely opening herself to further scrutiny? When she hit send, a rush of electricity surged through her. No matter the outcome, she acknowledged the importance of being proactive in shaping her environment. This wasn't just about the project. It was about her identity as a leader, a redefined vision of herself demanding to be actualized. As the days passed, Clara anxiously awaited his response while juggling an unrelenting workload. Tension pooled in her stomach. Every moment felt pregnant with possibility, hanging before her like ripe fruit just out of reach. But would accepting scrutiny lead to personal growth, or would it entrench her deeper into insecurity? Would Jason acknowledge her as an equal contributor in their project, or would the specter of fear stifle her motivation? The next step loomed closer, marked by the flickering anticipation of a revelation yet to come. The sun broke over the horizon, casting a warm glow across the conference room where Clara prepared for the day's pivotal meeting. For weeks, her resolve had deepened, born from every discussion, every piece of feedback, and every ounce of doubt she'd turned on its head. Today, she would finally present the culmination of everything she had learned, both technically and personally. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Settling into the familiar chair at the head of the rectangular table, Clara consciously let go of the knots of anxiety that had often held her back. The engineers gathered, their chatter a backdrop to Clara's introspective calmness. She had transitioned from a woman cloaked in doubt to a confident leader willing to confront both
ideas and individuals with clarity and purpose. As the meeting commenced, she unfolded her findings. The innovative changes in the robot's programming sparked conversation that ricocheted through the room, drawing everyone into the depths of her vision. There was a moment of tension when Jason was called upon to respond. She felt the familiar flutter in her chest. Would he challenge her again, or was there a budding respect shaping his queries? "I think you've addressed the complexities well," he remarked, but his tone lacked its previous sharpness. "But Clara, how will we navigate the limitations of our existing machinery while scaling these solutions effectively?" Instead of shrinking under pressure, Clara welcomed the inquiry as an opportunity to shine. "We will establish a phased integration," she replied confidently. "This will allow real-world testing while simultaneously adapting the existing framework to support these advances. Feedback loops and machine learning will help correct course as needed." The conversation continued, with Clara engaging her colleagues with the same energy and passion she had fought to establish. Their confidence in her grew, eyes lighting up with understanding, no longer merely skeptics but colleagues united with shared purpose. Witnessing Jason lean in with intrigue only reinforced her resolve. She was no longer fighting for validation but risk-taking for innovation. In a moment of serendipity, one of the younger engineers asked, "Clara, how did you stay motivated when things got tough? What kept you going? The question was unexpected, unfolding Clara's inner journey for all to see. Clara smiled, recollecting sleepless nights and the relentless push against unwarranted doubt. I had to learn that my worth is self-defined. I realized that my experiences, however unorthodox, gave me a unique perspective. It inspired me to contribute on my own terms. The room filled with an electric energy, her words resonating and igniting a sense of shared empowerment. It became evident that each of her colleagues had faced their versions of challenge, struggles often silenced behind their roles. Clara's transformation sought to inspire, each sentence clotted with the rawness of her struggle, weaving a relatable narrative that would echo long after the meeting's conclusion. As Clara wrapped up her presentation, she felt lighter, almost unburdened. The team erupted into applause, yet this time it wasn't merely a congratulatory gesture, it signified acknowledgement and respect. Jason even shot her a genuine smile, infused with appreciation for the work she had put forth. Afterward, as discussions broke off into smaller groups, Clara made her way toward Jason. "Thank you for your insights," she said, wanting to acknowledge how his perspective had shifted, how it had pushed her to think deeper and ask bolder questions. He inclined his head. "You've reshaped my view, Clara. Never forget how far you've come. Can't wait to see where this takes us." At that moment, Clara felt the chasm of doubt she had battled begin to close. She was not merely a cleaner who stumbled into engineering. She was a valuable member of a team that had collectively birthed innovation. The journey from simmering hesitance to vibrant authority brought a blaze of fulfillment, a recognition of her worth as a dynamic contributor. As she left the office that evening, the sun casting golden rays across her path, Clara felt solid confidence coursing through her veins. She had achieved not just a professional breakthrough, but a personal renaissance. She had proven her capabilities, bravely discarded the confines of her previous identity, and claimed her rightful space, robust and unwavering. Clara stood poised at the intersection of her future, a path pulsing with untapped potential and shimmering possibilities. This was the moment she had worked tirelessly to secure. She had transformed not just as a woman in a workplace, but as an individual who found her voice amidst the fray. With a glance at the setting sun, Clara made an inner vow to continue pushing boundaries, to stand boldly in the face of skepticism, and to never again allow doubt to dim her brilliance. It was time to forge ahead, illuminating her journey as she had always been meant to. Take action now. The journey to transformation starts with a single click. You need to subscribe immediately so you won't miss out on more inspiring stories like Clara's. Leave a like now to show your support and bolster our reach with your encouragement. Comment your thoughts and reflections on this journey. Your engagement can light the path for others. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need a dose of inspiration to fuel their growth. Together, we can amplify the message of personal overcoming stories.